of our meetings. And this will be posted on the project website. So just a few things before we get started. You can leave and rejoin the meeting at any time unless it's at capacity. I don't expect that for this meeting. Or if you're removed for some reason, which we hope it never comes to that. There will be opportunities for input along the way. So we'll be pausing for questions and answers. And I'll explain in a moment how you can submit questions or ask questions. The meeting is being recorded. And then the meeting materials will be on this website right here, which is a2gov.org/Earhart 2023. All right, Cynthia, if you don't mind advancing the slide. All right, this is our standard set of meeting norms. We basically ask people to be nice to each other. So with that, we ask that you commit to learning and avoid speculation. We really do want to sort through issues with you. So we really do welcome questions. So if you have any questions, please do submit them or virtually raise your hand, which again, I'll go over in just a moment. And we also ask that you remember the rights and dignity of other people. And with that, we ask that you critique ideas, not people, and that you are thoughtful about your language. We hope that this is a welcoming place for everybody to join. All right, if you don't mind advancing again. And so our demographic poll, for those of you who joined a little early, you've already heard this, but we do have a demographic survey that we like to do at all of our meetings. This survey is used just internally for us, so it is anonymous. We don't share this out except in an aggregate form. And this is really just to get a sense of who we're reaching so we can understand who we're not reaching. We'd like to do a better job at reaching people far and wide and all members of the community. So this is just helping us on our way to that. So I'll leave that up for about a minute more and I'll close it after the next couple of slides. Again, it's completely optional and it is anonymous. All right, next slide. Okay, this is the technology overview. So many of us are familiar with all of this because we've been using Zoom for a couple of years now. But just in case, I do want to go over that if you want to ask a question, you can virtually raise your hand. And there's a little hand at the bottom of the screen. So just click on that. Or you can submit a question in writing. And if you do that, then I'll read off your question and a team member will answer that. If you are on the phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand, and then I'll call out the last 3 digits of your phone number and allow you to talk. All right. And then the agenda today. So basically what we have in store for you tonight is the Zoom overview, which we just did. We're going to do the corridor history. So this is similar to the last meeting. If you were at the previous meeting, we're going to just review the corridor history a bit. We'll talk about the meeting objectives and then the project overview and then get into Q&A. So again, this is similar to the last meeting where we walked through the length of the project and just paused and allowed people to ask questions as we went along. So with that, let me introduce our team. So we've got Brian Szlewski, who's the project manager, and we have somebody new tonight. So I'd like to introduce Nicholas Bailey, who's going to be taking over project manager of this project and who will be serving as project manager on other projects coming up. He is new to the city. We are really excited to have him here at the city. And then Cynthia Redinger, who's our transportation engineer, myself, I work for systems planning, and Chris Carson, who's not here with us tonight, but he is our lead designer. All right, so then I think I turn it over to Brian now, is that correct?
Cynthia will give us a little background.
Cynthia, okay, great.
Yeah, I am taking over, but before we do that, I just wanted to note we do have a question that popped up in the question and answer, and that is, are we allowed to make comments or is this for questions only? And you can make comments if you would like in that area as well. And Heather will read those and share them with the group. So, all right. Oh, sorry. Let's see. In the wrong window. Okay. I'm going to apologize. I'm getting over a cold because I'm.
Oops, you went out on us, Cynthia.
No, I did not. I muted because I was coughing.
Oh, okay. Understandable.
which I will probably do at multiple points this evening, but I'm feeling a lot better, so nobody has to worry about me. I just don't sound so hot. All right, everyone. So we just wanted to do a little quick summary and reminder of where we are in this public participation process for Earhart. And we've got a bunch of history here. And just touching on that quickly, starting in 2013 with our non-motorized plan at the time, which called for bike lanes on Earhart. And then working up through 2018 when we did a technical review to see if the project was still feasible. And we looked at doing a sort of a paint and post project in 2019. That project did not move forward at that time, but as that engagement was wrapping up, we started working on our transportation plan update, which is called it is our A2 Moving Together, which is our Vision Zero safety-based comprehensive transportation plan. And while we were in the process of doing that, our partners in the sustainability office were working on the A20 carbon neutrality plan, which also supports multimodal design and transportation choices. And so moving through all of those processes, we have had some more recent project engagement. We met with you in October, and then which was the most recent time we went with you. And now we're back here tonight. So we're talking about the things that we've heard as we've gone through this process and where we are in the design. And just as a reminder, we did have that big listening meeting, which was back in December of 2021, so about a year ago. And the big concerns that we heard in that particular meeting centered around motorist speeds, the incomplete sidewalk network, those unimproved crosswalks, not having dedicated bicycle facilities, particularly lanes on street, and lots of concerns about the street and the intersection design and how that led to certain driver behaviors. Our last meeting really also supported a lot of those concerns as well, being sort of the travel needs and barriers. So tonight, our meeting objectives are we're summarizing that information that we'd already heard, which I just did, and we're going to go through and once again talk about our intersection designs and some of the things that we're going to be doing. So changes to intersections that we're going to be highlighting are the Waldenwood South intersection, where we're removing a turn lane, looking at both of the Green Hills intersections and changing that traffic control to roundabout, looking at what we could be doing with Ridgemar Square and both of those private drives that are on either side of the street there, looking at also looking at what we're doing up at Glacier Way and sort of sharing where the design is at this point, and then also discussing what the project schedule is going to be moving forward. So a little bit about our project layout. Anyone who was here at the last meeting this will look familiar. So we have our existing, this is our proposed conditions for the southern section. So that's going to be Getty's to Green Hills. And this was originally its own project, and now it has been combined with the project to the north. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of widening there and installing the bike lanes, working on some of the side slope stuff. And, there will be some new trees that are being installed. And then on the next section to the north, also looking at repurposing some of that pavement to continue those bike lanes and have that facility continue along the length of the corridor. So at this point in time, I am actually going to stop sharing, and Brian is going to pull up the roll plot, and we're going to walk through the corridor. And I just want to remind everyone, feel free to let us know any questions that you have. We want to have open discussion as we're going through this.
Thank you, Cynthia. Hopefully we transition smoothly and we see PDF of the aerial. If you don't see that, shout out to me because I'll be talking about something that nobody can look at. But this project, kind of the underlying improvements that we're talking about on Earhart Road, it really started out as just a resurfacing project where, you know, the road is in bad condition and we're going to come in and, you know, mill off, remove the pavement, the asphalt pavement, and put down new pavement. So that's kind of the underlying improvement of the whole thing. But layered on top of that, if you will, is an opportunity. You know, looking at the 820 and the transportation plan, it's an opportunity to improve the bicycle network and the pedestrian network and improve the road for the traveling public to slow traffic and make it safer. So it's gone from just a very simple resurfacing into something that's, you know, more holistic and looks at transportation for bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles and improving safety for everybody. And what I am going to do is just step through, if you've been in the previous meeting, I'm going to step through the aerial that goes from south to north, talk about the improvements, and I'm going to highlight a couple of the, I think a couple of the items that we've heard from our previous meeting and what our thoughts are on those. So what you're looking at right now is the very south end of the project, the big red barn in Concordia, the roundabout at Getty's Road. So our improvements will start just north of that intersection. It will be mostly resurfacing in this area. We do have some bicycle lanes, so it'll be maintaining those bicycle lanes. We're talking about, again, 10-foot travel lanes for vehicles, 6-foot bicycle lanes. And that cross section will, so I'm sliding along here, continue north. At Pine Bray, going north, the existing cross section is fairly narrow through there. I think it's 28 feet, if I have that correct on the top of my head, maybe even narrower than that. We'll be widening it to provide for, again, the 10-foot travel lanes, 6-foot bike lanes on either side. And one of the discussion points, we did have a very good discussion between the Pine Braes. On the east side, there is the cemetery where there's not really access where cars are pulling into the cemetery, but cars pull currently alongside. And that's to make sure that when the improvements are made with the new pavement going in, there will still be an access location for vehicles to pull off on the side and be able to access the cemetery. So that access will be maintained. We had talked about that at some point during the last meeting, and we'll maintain that access.
And Brian, we have, sorry to interrupt.
No,
we do have a couple questions that came in already,
yep.
and one person has to leave early, so they want to make sure that they get their question in. The first one is just a request from Councilmember Song. Councilmember Song, welcome to the meeting. And this request is to please share the engineering@a2gov.org email so that residents are able to send additional questions directly to staff. And if I recall right, Brian, we have your email, or possibly now it's Nicholas's email at the end of this presentation, as well as a link to the project site. So people will be able to access our contact information that way.
Yes, and exactly. We could, as I say, feel free to email either Nicholas or myself. We sit literally 10 feet apart and talk about this project regularly. So emailing one of us means we will both get it.
And this next one is actually up a little ways, but because they have to leave early, let's
Yep.
try to answer this question.
Okay.
My driveway is an Earhart Village driveway directly off Earhart, opposite Ridgemar. I've sent my comments to City Council and the city engineer. How will this design impact my ability to turn out of my driveway? What will change? My concern about the design is that it seems that the change will create a bottleneck along that stretch of Earhart outside my home between the two Green Hills intersections.
Thank you, Heather. Right now, the intersection is wide open, uncontrolled. So vehicles are able to, make a left turn in, make a left turn out from either direction. And one of the difficulties is the left outs, if you have two vehicles, one coming from the east side and one coming from the west side of Ridgemore, it creates the conflicts out there that are very undesirable. It's not something that would be engineered into a road today, and it will need to be controlled in some manner. The two options that we're looking at right now are to either close that completely, so that vehicles would, if you're coming out of Ridgemar or the driveway opposite, you would be turning, just making a right turn, going northbound on Earhart, or if you're coming from Ridgemar, going southbound at Earhart, with the opportunity to turn around essentially like a Michigan left at Green Hills North, or Green Hills South, or Green Hills North. So that's one option of handling that. The other would be to provide through the intersection or the median still an opening so that vehicles could turn left into Ridgemar, or if you're going south, you could turn left into the driveway opposite. And then you would exit by turning right out. Those are the two options that we looked at for this intersection. And I'm glad there's one person here who lives in one of those areas. But what we're going to do is, this requires probably a more focused conversation, is we'll be sending mailers out directly to the residents on either side of that to discuss this in a little bit more detail and ask for their feedback and have a dialogue about that, about the best way to treat this intersection. So we're looking at some options, and we will have further discussion, focused discussion, specifically with those impacted residents.
All right, thank you. Now going back to the cemetery, Brian, if you don't mind going back to that, there's a question.
Yep.
Will there be no sidewalks in front of the cemetery or sidewalks between the Pine Bray drives?
That's not, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. No sidewalks. There, in the long term, in the master plan, it calls for sidewalks through here, but our project does not include any sidewalks south of the Concord Pines subdivision. Anything else?
That's all
Heather?
nope, that's all the questions for now.
Okay.
So we can
Okay,
carry on.
I'll march. And by the way, if you can see the kind of the pink magenta lines on here, those just indicate the right-of-way line or the property lines, in case you're wondering what those are. And the green, if you see the green lines, that indicates for our bicycle facilities, you may have noticed downtown, especially through the intersections, the green paint, a visual cue that those are the bicycle lanes. So that's what's reflected on the drawings.
We do have a question at the one attendee is recalling that at the last meeting that sidewalks were proposed going all the way down south. Is that not the case? Had it been proposed and it's not anymore?
Yeah, it went up to Concord Pines. I think we may have looked at extending it up to Pine Bray, but that's there's certainly some extreme engineering challenges to do that. So it's not included in this project and maybe in a future project. But no, I didn't think we had anything down going south of the Pine Brays. south of North Pine Bray to the other end of the circle.
Mhm.
So moving to the north, again, what's shown as the big empty field is now not an empty field. It's the Concord Pines development. They have constructed sidewalk across their frontage. It's not shown on here. It will ultimately be shown in the final construction plan since it's in now. There's the exit, the new entrance to Pine Bray and the crosswalk that's being provided there from the new sidewalk, just north of their entrance. At Waldenwood, right now, there's a very wide entranceway over there that will be closed down to, just a normal entrance from a 2-lane road onto Waldenwood. It was like a large, I'll call it a deceleration lane, which would not be warranted on Earhart Road. I'm not sure if Earhart was at one time envisioned to be a high-speed throughway or something like that, but some of those elements that encourage the speed on the road we're trying to take out and slow things down a little bit out there. And as we go ahead, you got a
We have a
question?
question about the Waldenwood intersection.
Yep.
For the South Waldenwood intersection, since there is currently no left turn from northbound Earhart, will future modifications, adding a left turn lane, for example, or traffic control, no left turns during rush hour, etc., be possible if significant backups are observed?
Is it not this intersection?
For the South Waldenwood intersection,
Which would be there.
since there is currently no left turn lane from northbound
Because
Earhart.
the Waldenwood intersection north is right here, so it's not this one. It's the one we were just looking at.
I think so.
Okay. So then where are the question about the turns?
Yeah, since there is currently no left turn lane from northbound Earhart, will future modifications, adding a left turn lane or traffic control, no left turns during rush hour, etc., be possible if significant backups are observed?
So if in the future without the left turn lane, if that would be evaluated if there are significant backups, the answer is yes. I mean, the traffic engineering is a living, breathing thing, and if that is created, it's certainly not anticipated from what we have evaluated, but yes, that could be considered.
Okay. And then we do have a question about bike lanes. Will the bike lanes have the wide concrete divider? Also, was research done on the likely bike usage of Earhart? I frequent this area often as a pedestrian and rarely see bikes.
Cynthia, do you want to?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I am happy to take that one on. So we are not proposing concrete dividers at this point for this project. That's not part of this project scope. This project will be providing pavement marking buffers that will be supplemented with vertical devices as we're able to install them. As far as the usage question goes, I will point you to 3 sources. The first is the non-motorized plan from 2013, which shows that we as a community have a long established desire to install bicycle dedicated lanes on this corridor. The second thing I will point you to is our current transportation plan, which is also calling for this bicycle connection. And the third thing I will invite you to look at is a publicly available source of bicycle and walking and other active use sort of sampling data. And that is through the company Strava. Strava has a heat map that is really great for looking at what usage really is like in a certain area. And it's a great free publicly available way to go and look at where people are actually moving around the city and how they're moving through walking and bicycling. So you'll see that this corridor is not a dark corridor. It is a well lit up corridor.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Mhm.
And then we have some questions regarding the area once we get closer to Earhart Village. Comments
Sure.
and questions.
Yeah.
If you want to keep on going down the road till we get there, then I can read off those questions.
Sure. I just want to mention while we're here, you can see we're kind of transitioning that south of Walden Wood. It looks like the more traditional, a lane of traffic, a thick white stripe next to that lane of traffic, and then a bicycle lane. As you move to the north, we start with the widening pavement. We start to be able to have a buffer, and this is where Cynthia mentioned that when you do start getting into the area of the buffered bike lane, being that widened area where there's no traffic, we can deploy the vertical elements, the posts, for an added visual cue for drivers and a safety element for the bicyclists as we're going north. So you'll see the buffered lanes are continuing as we proceed to the north. And again, entering into, as we approach Green Hills, the roundabout where we will be using the vertical elements and the lane markings, around the roundabouts. And also want to mention that we have met with the fire department, and they're satisfied with the design, the way things are laid out with mountable roundabouts, that their apparatus can negotiate any turns through there. And so that would also be, applicable for, something like a bus or something like that, that they will be able to navigate the roundabouts. They're made so that it's not a hard curb adjacent to the inner circle, but it's a mountable curb that a larger vehicle its wheels can move up on if necessary to negotiate that. So did you, Heather, as we're now approaching Earhart Village, do you want to say what those questions are?
Yeah, definitely. So the first one is just a comment that they prefer to leave it open as it is. The next one has a question. I live in the Earhart Ridgemar area as well and feel strongly that you are trying to create a solution for a problem that does not exist. I know that we have asked to see accident statistics for the last 10 years to determine whether forcing a Michigan left is necessary. Have you submitted the accident statistics to Earhart Village? I am strongly opposed to either of the designs you are sharing. It will create unnecessary congestion to the roundabouts and will be terrible for residents. So if you wanted to, you or Cynthia have any comments about that?
Sure. I don't have crash data with me this evening. Didn't bring it with me. What I can tell you is that we have an overrepresentation of crashes in this corridor that are associated with right angle crashes and left turns into and out of all of these junction points, whether they're intersections or the driveways. The other thing that I will point out is that part of being a Vision Zero city is that we are using systemic applications of consistent design measures to prevent crashes. So we are choosing designs across the city that are going to be lowering speeds and preventing crashes and creating an environment that where a crash does occur, it will be a lower severity crash. So sometimes we're designing for a scenario that we know has the potential to have a certain outcome, and we want to make sure that that outcome does not happen.
Great, and along those lines, we actually have a couple questions coming in about sidewalks, but I'll stick with the roundabout turns for a moment and then get back to the sidewalks. And this one reads, I generally agree with the goals to make Earhart safer for cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers, especially if somebody gets tailgated on that road. But as a resident of Earhart Village, the idea of roundabouts at both access points is one I find worrying and excessive. This means I need to use either one or both when coming or going home. And in my experience, drivers just don't know how to use them. They ignore the yield signs and blast through. Every time I have to use the Nixon Huron Parkway roundabout, I feel like there's a chance of me getting T-boned. What can the city of Ann Arbor do to ensure drivers use the roundabouts properly?
So we follow standard design practice. If there's a particular behavior that is a behavior that's more of that it needs an enforcement solution as compared to an engineering solution. We do have partners in the police department for that. But I think, one of the things that is valuable about systemic design is that as you have more of particular types of devices or design treatments that are in place, folks become more and more familiar with them and are more comfortable with traveling through them in the way that's appropriate.
And as far as roundabouts go, these are all, I would say, on the very simple end of it. They're single lane roundabouts, so there's not complicated lane change movements moving through those. You don't have back-to-back roundabouts that we've encountered at some intersections. Very straightforward. This is the entry level roundabout, if you will, that we've found to be effective.
Great, and then we have a number of comments regarding the roundabout. So I'm not going to read through all of those, but I do want people to rest assured that this all gets recorded. So we have this in the written comments that actually gets recorded in Zoom in the meeting. So we do have that on hand. So we do have some comments that are both for and against the roundabout idea. Let's see if I have any more questions. Regarding the roundabout. Please describe the mountable area in the middle of the roundabout. What is the material?
We haven't selected yet, but oftentimes it's a concrete pavement, maybe like on a slight ramp. So you would notice it if you hit it and didn't want to. But it's gentle enough that if you're in a vehicle that needs to mount it to get around there, that you can roll your wheels up on it and not have it negatively impact your turn. It's typically a concrete, and it's differentiated. So it's an obvious not drive area that you're not routinely going to drive across. So it has that visual differentiation to it.
And Brian, if I can add to that a little bit, anyone who is familiar with the roundabout that is on Broadway, near Plymouth, at the bottom of the hill, down there, that has a mountable island that would be similar to these islands. So these intersections are, currently we can place these roundabouts in the middle of these intersections. That's how large these intersections currently are. And so the appropriate design there is, this compact urban roundabout. And as part of that, I wanted to make sure that everyone understands that in a personal vehicle, you're not going to want to be driving over that thing. It will be very disruptive to your driving if you're in a personal vehicle. But for a larger vehicle, such as our fire trucks, such as a you know, like a large moving truck, something like that, where they're coming through, they would be able to use that apron and drive over the island to get through, but they're not going to be able to do so quickly.
And on a related question, somebody asked if we can please have planted roundabouts, like I think it's meant to be Traver has.
Mhm. Yeah, and that goes back to the size and the fact that these are, you know, a compact urban style, where we're not moving the external curb lines of the intersection.
All right, let me see if we have any other roundabout questions. All right, it seems that traffic difficulties are only at the Earhart entrances during school drop-off and pickup times. The roundabouts seem excessive visually and practically for most times of the day's week. Can you provide traffic data that addresses the uniqueness of time of day, week that relates to the Green Hills school traffic? What other solutions are being discussed to address the school traffic versus day to day?
I would like to point out that the roundabout solution is, it's not a capacity solution for this corridor. So capacity wise, they will be fine. They will operate well. You know, we've done analysis of the corridor. We've had analysis done of the corridor with the full build out of the new development. And it shows that the operations will be fine. This intersection design is a safe solution to the change in the corridor to provide the bicycle lanes, and in response to the speed concerns that we've heard in the corridor. And that really ties into Ann Arbor moving together and the need to bring down driving speeds to create more favorable crash outcomes.
All right, now I'm going to jump over to sidewalk. Not that people can't continue to ask questions about the roundabout, but for now, let's jump over to the sidewalk questions. The first one is the right-of-way lines and public right-of-way footage up to Green Hills Drive indicated there's ample room for a sidewalk on the east side of Earhart to be constructed in the public right-of-way versus outside the right-of-way on private property. Can you confirm this assessment is accurate? And if so, explain why the sidewalk would not be built in the public right-of-way.
Yes, we had the opportunity, Nicholas and I, to meet with some of the Earhart Village residents, and we walked through this and are comfortable that we're able to really move the sidewalk down, you know, close to the road within the right-of-way. In some areas where there is a land, you know, a large berm there, provides some type of, you know, retaining wall on the back of the sidewalk, so that we can maintain the sidewalk in the right-of-way and not go onto private property. That's always a goal for the city, that we certainly want to construct the public facilities in the public right-of-way and not utilize you know, private property or need an easement for private property. So the goal is, you know, and visually, I know it shows it swinging out here, and when we were in the field, we talked about, you know, tweaking that to, again, keep that sidewalk up close to the curb as possible. And, you know, looking at, you know, keeping it up by the sidewalk as we move all the way through adjacent to Earhart Village, because that sidewalk would be extended all the way up to really connect at Glacier Way, where it meets the Glacier Hills sidewalk. So our goal is to keep everything in the right of way, not take out the berm per se, but utilize some retaining wall where needed.
Right. And this person is asking for a detailed design of the sidewalks. What trees will be removed and how will the berm be impacted? And I don't think we quite have that just
We are
yet.
not quite there yet. We would be happy to share that when available.
Let's see. Let me see if we have any other sidewalk questions. Here's one. Instead of installing new sidewalks, have you considered widening the bike lanes by reducing the chevron marked area, thus making these lanes multi-use or both bike walk lanes?
No, the sidewalks would be, we keep them behind the curb. We would not put the sidewalks down on adjacent to the roadway.
And here's a question about cutting into the berm for the sidewalk. If you cut into the berm, won't that damage the roots of planting on top of them? On top of the berm?
Again, as we went through and we're looking at the berm and where the trees were, I think it was pretty small area, and it was probably at the very far north with some of the pine trees where it seemed it might have some impact. Again, the detailed design will show those specific trees, but in large part, it's far enough away from the trees, and the berm retaining wall is low enough where it's not going to be that impact.
And here's a question. Why is it necessary to have a sidewalk on both sides of the street?
It's absolutely a goal here, especially by schools. We have King's School, Green Hills School, further down to St. Peter or St. Paul School to provide sidewalks on both sides. It's absolutely part of the transportation plan and consistent with Vision Zero to increase the safety through the corridor.
Yeah, and this is kind of, you basically answered this question, but the question is, we live in the area, have 2 kids in schools, and strongly support this proposal. I really like the bike lane component of this project. I think this project makes a bike lane or sidewalk in Geddes, in Earhart and here in Parkway even more important. Is this in the master plan? And if so, any thoughts on when this could happen? So maybe if you could talk on the timing.
On which is what in the what sidewalk? I think, was there a different project we were talking about where sidewalk is needed?
I think it's for this project. Maybe this person might want to clarify, but I think we're talking about this proposed project and the timing of when this could happen.
The project that we're looking at right now will be constructed in 2023.
The sidewalk in Geddes. So this person is clarifying on
Oh, the
Geddes.
sidewalk on Geddes, I don't have that as a project that I'm aware of.
From Earhart to Huron Parkway. Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't have that at the moment.
I know I was the engineer responsible for the construction in 2021 with the water main and the road repaving. So I personally appreciate how narrow it is through there. And I know it's a goal to have sidewalk there, but not having dug into it, I can appreciate how difficult it will be to construct that sidewalk. So I imagine that's going to be a very large project and probably fairly lengthy and a costly project. So I'm not aware of it being on the books in the near term. I think it's a long-term desired goal, but probably requires a lot of things to fall into place for that to happen.
All right, and this is going back to the sidewalk in the right of way. So it reads, thank you for your helpful responsive explanation regarding building the sidewalk in the public right of way. In the area along Earhart, again, on the Earhart Village property side of the road where the sidewalk is shown on your map, it appears the design would impact the tree root zones, which would kill the trees on Earhart Village. Has the city forester studied this proposed sidewalk location? And if so, would you share her review when convenient and available?
Yes, we will. Yeah, I'm sorry. We do that once we get into the design and looking at where things are impacted. Yes, we do. These are trees in the public right of way.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to go back through the questions and see where we're at. We do have a request to define or describe a vertical element. And actually this came up at a meeting last night. So I want to apologize that we often use jargon and we're trying to
Oh,
be a
I'm
little bit
sorry.
more mindful of describing that. So Brian or Cynthia, if you don't mind giving a definition for what a vertical element means.
Bollard.
They're
It's a
posts. It's a
bollard.
post. A
Yeah.
post is, yeah.
Yeah, post a bollard. You'll see them downtown, and you've seen them downtown in association with some of the cycle tracks that have gone in the downtown area. There are the larger ones, and then there are the smaller ones that are the city posts, and those, that's the type of material. We've also used them in some other places throughout town for several different types of uses.
And going back to the roundabout, here's a question. Why can't you just put a speed bump and put in a lane? I agree, roundabout is excessive.
We are working on a speed management program for major streets. It's not completed at this point in time. So we're not installing vertical elements like that on major street corridors. But if you were to go onto our website and take a look at that speed management program, which I encourage everyone to do, and there's a place to give us feedback there as well. It's part of our A2 Moving Together plan implementation that we're working on currently in transportation. So please do go check that out. Okay, advertisement over. Roundabouts are part of that speed management toolbox, and they're an appropriate device for an intersection treatment for this corridor.
All right, and getting back to definitions and explanations, we do have a request from Councilmember Song to give a quick overview of Vision Zero. So if Ryan or Cynthia, if you don't mind doing that. It's hard to summarize that plan, but if you could give somewhat of an overview, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Vision Zero is it's a multinational movement, but the driving force behind the movement is that deaths and serious injuries due to transportation is unacceptable. And once you have chosen to accept that killing people and hurting them severely is an unacceptable thing, then you are looking at how, as a transportation owner, right? The city of Ann Arbor, we own our transportation infrastructure, we manage it, and how do we manage and operate and design our system to have the best outcomes? Because people make mistakes, and part of this design philosophy is understanding that people make mistakes and creating environments where, when those mistakes happen, we are not seeing a loss of life. So one of the biggest, strongest goals that we have when you read through our plan, our transportation plan, is really starting to bring driving speeds down, because that's just pure physics and the amount of force that a human body can take. So we're really looking at designs that are going to be changing the way people behave when they're using the transportation system, regardless of the mode that they're traveling by. And it's also providing lots of transportation options for everyone everywhere, so that people can move through the city in the mode that they choose. And it's also part of it is looking at the places where we have the highest concentration of severe injury, and addressing those areas. But then it's also in projects like this, taking that very systemic look at how we are designing our projects and consistently designing our projects to deliver built environments that are going to support multimodal travel safely and to really bring those driving speeds down.
All right, so along those lines, we actually have a couple questions about crosswalks and slowing speeds. So this one reads, the current pedestrian crosswalks are not effective. Cars are not stopping when pedestrians attempt to cross, and sometimes when pedestrians are already in the crosswalk. Is there a plan to install the lighted posts that flash?
So if you're talking about the pedestrian activated flashing beacons, they are not part of the plan. Part of the plan is reducing the pavement cross section that a pedestrian has to be crossing. So for instance, the two roundabouts that we're showing here and the crossings of Earhart, a pedestrian only has to cross one lane of travel in one direction at a time. So that's separation of space and really protecting that crossing as much as we can, and protecting the bicycle movements through the intersection as well.
Okay. And this question if slower speeds are the goal, why leave the lanes wide with painted lines? Why not narrow the street?
With a much, with a much greater budget, I think we would love to do that, to completely change the road. Once, however, you get into really narrowing down the road, moving the curb lines, narrowing the pavement, reconstructing it, from a cost and engineering perspective, you go on from a resurfacing and making improvements with markings to really a more of a reconstruction type project. And you change things like the drainage patterns dramatically, and you end up constructing a lot of storm sewer. And it's one of those things that just becomes much bigger. It sounds very straightforward to do that, but it becomes, twice the project that we have. So what we're able to do here is to take kind of an affordable project, being a resurfacing, add cost-effective elements to it to get the greatest result we can. You can always spend more money for more project, but that's not what we're about on this one.
Okay, and then going back to crosswalks, will any of the crosswalks across Earhart be lighted or have some other element like what we have for Huron High School students near their Huron Parkway entrance? And similarly, we have another question of what is the improved lighting plan?
Once we have finalized what our design is out here, then as part of that, we will be looking at where the lighting is and where lighting needs to move to have positive contrast lighting.
But the goal will be to provide that positive contrast lighting at the crosswalks.
Yeah.
And by positive contrast, I mean the overhead lights are positioned such that an approaching driver won't just see a shadow, but they'll see the person in the light at nighttime.
Okay, and then we have a couple questions regarding the vertical elements, the post. Will the posts protecting the bike lanes remain standing through the winter?
Yes. Yes, they're not
Yes.
removable. And we've talked to Public Works that does the clearing, and talked about the parameters that they need and that we can provide, that make them something that can be permanent.
Okay, yeah, and that was the next question, was how do these vertical elements affect snow removal on the bike lane? So it sounds like they will be cleared out.
Yes.
Okay, let's see where we're at here. Going through questions. All right, how about we jump to some turning questions? How will this overall design accommodate turns in and out of St. Paul and Concord Pines? Again, these are pinch points in the traffic flow, especially during school pickup, drop-off hours. I'm very concerned about unreasonable traffic bottlenecks on Earhart.
Conditions at both of those intersections or both of those driveways will not be changing. So they will, except for the addition of the bike lane, vehicular conditions aren't changing there. So it is consistent with what's currently experienced at St. Paul's Lutheran, and it will be consistent with the analysis that was conducted for the new development.
Yeah. The new development, Cynthia, there was a traffic analysis as
Yes.
part of that.
Yes, it was, in part of their analysis, they analyzed the scenario with the roundabout at Glacier. They did analyze that scenario as well. And that was independently reviewed.
Okay, and then combining roundabouts and crosswalks, we have a couple questions. The roundabouts make sense to me because they slow speeds naturally, while skillfully keep traffic moving, which is especially important during the school-related busy times, and they are preferred to traffic lights, which cause auto braking and acceleration noises. Yet if we go to all this effort, get the benefits of traffic control using roundabouts, then why cause traffic backups by removing turn lanes and deceleration lanes at South, Waldenwood, and other neighborhood intersections?
And we, as you know, in the early stages of this design, we did look at what our volumes were, and we determined that it was feasible to take those out.
Okay, and then here's a question. When a pedestrian is walking from the south sidewalk on Glacier and wants to enter Green Hills Drive, it means they need to go out of their way to use a crosswalk. My understanding is that pedestrians will usually not do this and attempt to cross. Can an additional crosswalk be installed at either the northernmost two roundabouts? Either of the northernmost two roundabouts?
The question again, Heather, was at Waldenwood, Green Hills North, and then at Glacier Way, where we do have the crosswalks, that a request for what, looking at an additional crossing there?
Yeah,
Element.
additional cross, yep. Yeah, the question is, when a pedestrian is walking from the south sidewalk on Glacier and wants to enter into Green Hills Drive, it means they need to go out of their way to use a crosswalk. And so the question is, you adding additional crosswalks.
That is something I think we can take a look at, those movements. I think it's something worth looking at.
Okay. Great. All right. And now I'm going to jump over to some data requests. So one request is to provide a map that shows the surveyed middle of Earhart. Is that something that we have available?
Our survey, the survey data?
The surveyed middle of Earhart Road.
It is something that we would have.
The middle line as surveyed of Earhart Road.
I don't know that usually they're picking up the right of way. I'm not sure that they would have picked up the center line of that.
Okay.
Brian, I guess, you know, we could say it's the midpoint between the two purple
Yeah,
lines.
yeah. Can you get the light? Sorry, the lights just went out here. Yeah, I mean, we can take a look at what data we have, but especially since it's not a a 5-lane road, centered on the right of way. That's what I'm thinking. We might not have that specifically that we're looking at. We'll have to see what data that we have.
Okay. And then here's a question about data on severe injuries in this area, and if we can share that. Also, crosswalks without a flashing light is very dangerous as people do not pay attention. If our goal is to maximize safety, why would we not put them in? So it's a request for data as well as a question about putting in flashing lights.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the, crash
Yeah,
data.
so yeah, there's two things in here.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one is, can we share data on severe injuries in this area?
All of the city's crash data is available on our website, a2gov.org/crashes. I'll double check that. But anyways, even if you go onto a2gov.org and you search for crashes, you'll get to the crash map. It has also, you can get to our crash map. You can get to a lot of charts about how different data is performing in the area. So you can see a heat map. You can see crashes. It's clickable. You can look at things. If you don't like the way that map looks, you can also check out the traffic crash maps on SEMCOG's website and on MichiganTrafficCrashFacts.org, which is the state website that has all of the state crash data available to all of the public.
All right, and do we have data available on how many daily vehicle trips will the Concord Pines development generate?
Yep, that is also publicly available through, that would have been in Trackit. So that's through eTrackit, and all of the information for that site development is available to the public, including their transportation impact analysis.
Okay. And then this was a question, will you post the traffic studies and other relevant data on your website? And the answer is yes, but do you have any more detail to that?
So what traffic studies are the question?
Will there be, sorry, let me get back to it. Will you post traffic studies and other relevant data on your website?
Well, as I said, they're already available to you.
Okay. Let's see. All right, going back actually to the cemetery area, here's a question from somebody that says, Cynthia, you spoke with me at length on the phone in late 2020 and told me that the road would go further to the west to not impact the cemetery. Is that still the case?
I don't remember that particular conversation, but I've had lots of conversations with lots of people about this corridor, so I apologize for not remembering that. Brian is navigating down there, and we had lots of discussion at our last public meeting. Brian has had the fantastic Mr. Fiegel show us some parked cars.
I thought it was possibly about 4 feet on either side. I mean, this one, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the numbers right before the meetings, but I thought we had 2 12-foot lanes, 24 feet wide now, and the future 32-foot wide intersection would just be widened out both ways, providing the bike lane and still having adequate room for the parking adjacent to the cemetery.
Okay. Here's a question. Is there such a thing as having too many crosswalks and inducing fatigue for the drivers so they pay less attention to the non-lighted crosswalks?
No. I mean, if people need to get across the street, then we should provide them with a crosswalk. I don't think in a residential area we should be expecting crosswalks. And to be honest, when there are more crosswalks, people are more likely to look for pedestrians in those crosswalks. I think while the question said lighting, and our intent is to provide lighting for all the crosswalks on our major streets. And in that, as Brian described, that positive contrast where the pedestrians being lit from the side, so they're not in their own shadow that could possibly be hiding them. But if you're talking about the blinking lights, which is that active warning device, that is a tool that is in our toolkit. And we typically use those on multi-lane facilities or higher volume facilities as well.
All right. Moving on to the next question. Your drawing shows the new sidewalk in front of Earhart Village connected to the sidewalk in front of Glacier Hills. Is that possible given the electric poles, sewers, and other infrastructure?
At the north end is where we really get into the no, go past Green Hills. With the infrastructure, so we need to look at that. That's a design detail focus to see how we best handle that conflict at the north end. Multiple poles, utility boxes, where we're going to be putting that sidewalk.
Okay. And then here's a question about turns from Earhart. Did I catch that there are no turns from Earhart onto Waldenwood South? Please clarify.
No, there's turning there. I thought somebody was saying it was difficult to turn onto Waldenwood South. It would be difficult. It's not prohibited.
Okay. And then here's a request to please address the question about maximizing safety and the blinking lights. This was slipped over. Seems we are putting roundabouts and crosswalks, but not the obvious flashing light. So if you, Brian or Cynthia, if you have more to expand on about whether flashing lights would be a good application in this area or not.
With our current use for the blinking lights are, I think, and Cynthia mentioned it on the multi-lane or higher volume roads, did not think that was being proposed out here on Earhart. Certainly not a multi-lane road. In fact, we're taking efforts to reduce the lanes where it is multi-lane.
And the crosswalks will be designed to be consistent with our crosswalk design guidelines.
And here's another question about data. Several years ago, the engineering department modeled the expected change in car crashes after converting these lanes and installing roundabouts. It was included in a city council caucus question memo when this project was voted on by council. Can this data be posted to the project page?
Yeah, that's something that staff can go back and look at. It's been a few years. We'll have to take a look at the research and see if the research has changed at all on that.
And then we have a question again with data about being able to post things on our website. If we could just make it easier for somebody to find a link or have a link to go to
We could
find that
provide,
information.
I jotted that note down that we could provide a link to some of that data that's somewhere
Okay.
else.
Okay, great. And then just some questions about next steps in terms of engagement. What efforts are planned for 2023 to get input from residents on Earhart and addressing them? I'm concerned we're not all being heard. And I know that my fellow Earhart Village neighbors have concerns with the project. So maybe if you just want to review a little bit about the engagement efforts that have been done and then what might be coming down the line.
I think at this point, we will be taking the input we have and providing as soon as we can a design reflecting some of the changes, the challenges, the engineering challenges, and the ideas that we've been hearing. Do some good conversation with I mentioned early on, the residents on Ridgemar and the opposing driveway about how we could treat that intersection, and to get some real plans together that we can make available on the site and get input on. Our next step would probably be going to the Transportation Commission with the project, and they may be taking some action, but not necessarily. We want to get their input though, and make the Transportation Commission aware of this project. But the focus will be to get it to design and then to ultimately to construction. So our goal is to take input, incorporate that into the design, and move forward with that design towards construction.
And this question is provide dates and project timelines when the final design meeting will be held, when it will go to Transportation Commission.
Now we can update the webpage with that. We can look at where we are with the plans and when we can go to Transportation Commission.
Yeah,
I suspect it would.
Sorry.
I would suspect it would be their January meeting. I think it's certainly not their December meeting, which I think is tomorrow night. But looking at the January meeting, most likely to get it to them.
And then we have a question about cost. What is the cost of this project and when was the calculation done?
I would have to really take a look back with as we've delved into the public engagement, we probably haven't gone back and looked at the recent cost calculations. You have to do that again.
And then here's a concern about the option B dog bone intersection at Ridgemar. It seems that this will induce conflicts for people trying to illegally turn left out of Earhart Village. Drivers can spare the extra 10 seconds in safety and go around to the roundabout. Oh, so that's a comment, not a question.
Yeah.
All right, we'll add those to the comments. Again, this is all
Yeah,
being cataloged.
Any
Sorry.
modifications that, I like that term, the dog bone intersection. Any modification, we have to make sure in the design that a creative driver can't use it incorrectly to make a convenient move for them that's really not desired. So it would have to be a very clear layout for that intersection. And that would be the challenge.
All right, and while we have this lull in questions and comments coming in, Brian and Cynthia, did you have more that you wanted to walk through on this?
I'll say, I mean, the main changes that we've been talking about really go up to the Glacier intersection. Beyond that, there's really minimal change to the road. Again, we are adding the bike lanes and the buffered bike area and the protection with the posts. But it's largely, the road feel, I guess you'd say, is unchanged. There's certainly the crosswalks being implemented. But as you get towards US 23, it transitions back to, just a 2-lane road going north. I know several folks have contacted us asking for contacts to the DOT, which we provided, that we're interested in, starting that conversation with the DOT. And I think the important thing there is if any changes are made to that structure, we would want to be engaging with the Department of Transportation to make sure some pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities are incorporated into that. The bridge itself is owned by the Department of Transportation. So our ownership jurisdiction really stops at the south side of that bridge.
And we have a question again about funding. How is it being funded? And when will the cost be updated, and how will this information be shared?
It's primarily transportation, the road resurfacing funds. So that's the city millage for streets, sidewalks where sidewalks are installed. So it's existing city millage that's primarily funding that.
And then what are the sizes of the roundabouts for Green Hills? The same size as the one at Broadway?
They actually vary. If you can see, it's hard to see them both at the same time, but the one on the south is a little bit smaller, and it's just because we are constructing everything within the confines of the existing intersection. So the southerly Green Hills intersection is a bit smaller. There's a bit more space on the one to the north.
All right, the Kipling Drive and Glacier Hill Circle can still make both left and right turns. Why was this changed as it was in front of Earhart Village? Why wasn't this changed as it was in front of Earhart Village?
You mean why was in front of Earhart Village?
Mhm.
The thing that we have here that's really difficult is the way these conflict. With the offset creates a conflict of movements where we could make things, one of the driveways you could have an in and out, and the other really wouldn't have any access, possibly. But the offset driveways, you're getting vehicles heading at each other if you leave it open. That's why. Where the other intersections are much more straightforward. You can see that, well, the Glacier Hills, this is a single entrance point at Kipling and at Glacier Hills. So it's that odd offset intersection that really makes it difficult to try to manage all those movements that are desired.
Okay, that's the quite, let's see. This is more of a comment, but maybe Cynthia and Brian, you might have some thoughts about it. At Ridgemar intersection, you have a huge median to work with. You could give each cross street its own generous route to leave and return.
Yeah, it's the devil's in the details to try to lay it out so you're not having conflicts. It's really we had the detail here, for the option of the left in. If you're trying to get traffic moving out to, you have too many conflict points there. And there's other layouts that we looked at that were really became amenable to misuse of somebody turning the wrong way where they shouldn't, just because it might be convenient for them to be able to zip in or zip out against traffic.
Yeah, just to support that a little bit, the layout that's there, if you were to look at access management guidelines, this is what would be called a negative offset, so that your turns, particularly your left turns, they're they're set up to be in conflict with each other. So that's why this area is a little bit different. It's managing the conflict between those turns and the goals for the corridor.
Are posted speed limits expected to change?
Yes. Yes. As far as from transportation staff's perspective, once the project goes in and we have some time for use of the corridor to normalize, then we'll take some before data, we'll take some after construction data, and then we will be looking at establishing a speed limit that's appropriate for the corridor.
Here's a question. Sorry if I missed this earlier. Would a vehicle exiting Glacier Hills heading southbound need to make a Michigan left?
Glacier Hill, there's two Glacier Hills. They can both make a left turn.
So they would not be required to make a Michigan left?
Correct. Yeah, the Glacier Hills and again, the Kipling intersection are much simpler with just the single access point on one side of the road without that conflict opposing.
Okay. And here's a question about the near 23. The US 23 bridge appears very unsafe for bicyclists and pedestrians. The new design of Earhart seems to promote more pedestrian and cyclist activity over the bridge. It seems unsafe to do so before providing more safety measures over the bridge. I know this is a different jurisdiction, but has the city considered how this might promote more pedestrian traffic over the bridge that will not be protected?
I think it's important to keep in mind that we already have folks using the bridge, right? Particularly cyclists. We have a lot of cyclists who are currently using the bridge. And that shows up in the Strava data that I referenced earlier. So as we build out, as we build out our system and we have facilities and, there are on the north side of the bridge on the Washtenaw County Road Commission system, they have a wide shoulder there the cyclists are able to use. So at that point in time, as we have the opportunity to engage with the Michigan Department of Transportation about any changes that they might be considering to their bridge, we're demonstrating the need with the facilities that we have. So we can't affect the bridge right now, but we can provide facilities for folks when they come off of the bridge.
And if some improvements are made at some point in the future on this bridge, perhaps the sidewalk, that comes off of Kipling would be extended if that were appropriate at that time.
Okay, no other questions right at this moment. We did have a lot of comments that came in and I didn't read all of them. So I just want to, again, assure everybody that all of your comments are getting cataloged. It actually gets recorded in a Zoom report, which will be part of the project file. So they're not being ignored. It's just for time's sake, because we do have a lot of questions coming in. We want to make sure we get to the questions during this meeting, that I'm just focusing on the questions. And another question just came in, which is what is the projected time frame for construction?
Shall I share that slide?
Yeah, we might as well jump to that. We can always come back to other questions if we need to.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, as we mentioned, we'll be moving into design and final design at the beginning of the year, and then bidding the project late winter so that spring through fall, we'll be into construction, the resurfacing, the striping, and and ultimately the sidewalk work. It will also be, and I mentioned this previously, I'll just take an opportunity again, in terms of once we're under construction, for the construction season, the maintenance of traffic, we are looking at that we will maintain one-way traffic on Earhart Road through the summer, so that vehicles will be able to move in one direction only during construction. And if it's potentially northbound as we get into the maintenance of traffic, it will be maintained in that same direction throughout the entire project. It gets very confusing if you try to flip a control like that and all of a sudden send the traffic in the other direction. So once the traffic control is set up and one-way traffic is maintained, it will be maintained in that direction throughout the project. But we are looking at wrapping up construction in the fall. And this slide also has, again, my contact, my email, and Nicholas's email. Feel free to contact, email one or both of us, and it gets to the project team if you send us an email.
A question about the construction, during the construction time, I assume people living on Earhart will be able to come and go as needed, even if transportation is in one direction?
In one, they'll be able to go in that direction. Yeah, so if the northbound traffic is maintained, they'll be able to move north on Earhart Road. Correct.
All right, no other questions? What if we need to go south to return?
I'm sorry. If you need to go south, and if traffic's maintained northbound, everybody's going northbound. That's why I wanted to make that clear. It does create some difficulties if you need to go south, that you'll need to have a plan to go around. It was sort of like we had Getty's Road in 2021. All the traffic was maintained eastbound. So no matter what way you wanted to go, even if you needed to go back just one street over, you were going only east on Getty's Road to get there. It will be the same condition on Earhart.
And there's a concern that if that happens, they wouldn't be able to get back into Earhart Village. Is that the case, or would people be able to come and go?
They can come and go as long as they're going in whatever direction is maintained on the road.
So they would have to.
You could loop around, certainly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What will the detour for south be?
What will the detour be? Would be
For south.
Getty's. We'll be detouring Getty's to here on Parkway back to Point.
Okay. And then a question, have police and fire departments review the construction traffic plan, and will both departments access routes be unimpeded?
They will. They are certainly, this is a significant change in traffic pattern. They are notified well ahead of time. Same thing with ambulance, and that notice goes out to a large number of people.
Okay, and then we have a hand raised by Linda. You can go ahead and ask your question. You can unmute yourself now and ask the question.
What about the traffic on with Green Hill School? It is absolutely incredible at the morning hours and the afternoon dismissal. What?
So during the construction?
During construction, it won't be allowed to stop on Earhart Road. If that, Linda, is maybe what you're getting at, if it would cause a backup on there. And if enforcement is needed, we'll use that as necessary to make sure traffic keeps moving.
Also, just the traffic on Green Hills Drive. You were there, Brian, with us last week, and you saw the tremendous amount of people going in and out.
Yes, there are a lot of people that at drop off and pickup time are
Yes.
moving on to Green Hills, and we'll need to make sure that they are not stopping on Earhart.
But what about Green Hills Drive? That's where it gets horribly backed up as well.
I'm sorry. So traffic backs up on Green Hills by
Yes,
the
it
school?
does.
Yes.
Front, yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Is this project a control? This project won't control or address that.
But somebody will address the traffic in and out, at least with Green Hills School.
Yeah, the traffic will I mean, our control on this will be to make sure the traffic is not stopping on Earhart Road.
Okay. I think I got it. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, absolutely, Linda.
All right.
And then how will response times be impacted?
Response times for,
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I have. How will response times be?
it might be emergency response times. We let them know well ahead of time, and they plan accordingly. And they make sure they will have, I mean, once they know that where the road limit is, they set up their response routes to respond to access appropriately. Certainly, this is an area where you have other roads that they are able to get to.
Okay. All right, that is it for the moment. As usual, we'll wait around a few more minutes if people have other questions that come to
Sure.
them. But for now, thank you everybody for taking the time to come and have this
Thank you.
discussion with us tonight. And feel free to drop comments in here if you want to just add a comment before the meeting is over with. Feel free to drop that in the Q&A. And I'll keep my eye out for other questions coming in. And of course, if a question comes to you afterwards, which sometimes happens, you wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I wish I asked this one thing. Again, you can reach our project managers at the emails that are provided on the slide. And we will be posting information as it comes along to this project website that's shown on the slide. Here's a question that came in. Will sidewalks be done at the same construction timeline as the road?
I think conceptually the road work will be completed, and then the sidewalk work would be done after that. Subject to change, but laying out the project right now, that's what looks like the likely scenario.
Will the city replace all trees removed and repair the landscaped areas that are disturbed?
We always restore any disturbed areas, and trees are replaced as appropriate. Again, we go through that with forestry, usually looking at the tree removals and where trees are replaced, and the types of trees that are replaced also.
Who will be responsible for snow removal on the new sidewalks?
That is by ordinance. The adjacent property owners are responsible for sidewalk or for maintenance of sidewalks.
All right, nothing more coming in at this time. So again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I think we'll wait around another minute or two if anything comes up. But otherwise, again, thank you for joining us, and you can reach out to us at these emails and stay tuned for progress at this project website. All right, well, I see nothing more coming in for the moment, so I think I'm going to close out the meeting. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, team. And once again, if anything does come to you, you can contact the project managers as well as visiting the project website, which is www.a2gov.org/Earhart 2023. All right, and with that, thank you, everyone. Good night.